Hey, we are back with the last episode of 2023 of FUD Yourself. JD Gagnon here, and not Kiara, but we've got Christine from Tashi. Excited to have you back. Thanks for joining.
Thank you. This is 3 Mondays in a row. I'm really winning here. I get to end the year, which makes me more important than Kiara.
You're kind of a big deal, a Monday big deal. We are a live show Monday to Friday, 12:30 p.m. Eastern. Normally every single day, but we are about to enter our winter season break until Groundhog Day. So all of January, I know it's going to be heartbreaking. We're working on new content, new shows, new structures for all of this. So we're actually going to be working on the pod in January, and we'll be back to live shows starting February. So if anybody is interested in what we've got going or has any suggestions, please let us know. Quick shout out to our friends at Liquid Collective for the merch today. It is a Liquid Collective Christmas sweater.
It's actually a sweater. It's not even like a long sleeve, hey?
No, it's like a proper, it's like a proper knitted sweater. It's awesome.
Well done, Liquid Collective.
So I'm a big fan. This is what we got last year from Liquid Collective, these awesome, huge hoodies. But this year they stepped up the bloody game. The merch game has stepped up. So thank you to Liquid Collective. And with that, let's freaking go. Doing a little dance, shake a little thing, get down tonight. Okay.
Like Christmas music for sure. You guys should have made a Christmas one.
Yeah, Kiara's not here. So all the really like cool creative stuff is a little less when Kiara's not here. So cold. Yeah. Enrique, I don't know what's going on. We have a comment on YouTube that says, it's funny that I'm cold and you're not because I'm wearing a sweater. I'm like freezing. Like actually freezing for some reason. I don't know why. Maybe the AC is blowing on me or something, and Christine's like ready to die of heat. So anyways, all right. We got a whole bunch of stuff to cover today. I really hope that this is one of the last times we talk about this shit, but I suspect we're probably going to continue talking about it until this is all sorted and SBF is sentenced and all this other crap. But essentially what's happening right now, the debtors, so essentially the FTX, the people that have taken over FTX to try to deal with the bankruptcy and make people whole, have suggested a reorganization plan and a retroactive valuation structure, which is kind of interesting. And so I'll kind of set it up here, Christine, and then I'm curious about your thoughts. So what they're doing is, at the time of the FTX bankruptcy, Bitcoin was at $18,000. And right now Bitcoin is plus or minus 40,000, 41,000, whatever it is. I haven't checked in the last couple hours. But that's a massive difference. So as an example, what they're trying to say is we don't want to have to pay back people the USD value today. We want to pay back people what the USD value was on the day of bankruptcy. Now, I have a ton of thoughts on this, obviously, but Christina, I'm kind of curious. What do you think? Do you think that makes sense? Or
I have an absolutely huge problem with this. Because if I lend you money in US dollars and you pay me back in Kit Kat bars, I will be super mad. Mad because they're not the same thing. Whatever was loaned to them, it should be paid back in that same asset. In the exact same, not the value of that asset at a specific time. If I give you a bar of gold, you shall give me back a bar of gold, not the dollar value of a bar of gold at the time I lent it to you. That's not how it works. They should be paying them back like the assets. They should be getting assets back. I understand 100% why they would do this. And it's nice that somebody is trying to make this whole and rectify this problem. And I get it. I understand where they're coming from. But I think that really speaks to the misalignment between the assets themselves being something in their own right and them being tied to a dollar value.
Yeah. I mean, this makes perfect sense if you're the debtor. If you're FTX, like the whole that is, I think at the end, I think it's 4 or 5 billion of like MIA assets Some people say up to 8 billion. I don't really know, but that amount is probably double in the value, USD value, if you actually paid back people in the underlying currency. So as a creditor of FTX, they owe us a pile of money. Part of me says, if I just get back the USD value, that's better than currently, which I have no access to any of the resources. The flip side of that argument is, if you wouldn't have done something malicious, then I would still have those assets, which would be worth 2 or 3 times what they were then. And so it's not my fault that you guys committed fraud, obviously. So why should I be penalized for that, just so that the bankruptcy goes smoother? That's kind of how I look at it. I'm with you, Christine. I think it's kind of nonsense. I see why they're doing it, of course. The bankruptcy courts probably love this because it's simple. It's less of a hole to fill than previously, or than would be otherwise. But it's just, I think it's a bit of a slap in the face to all of the creditors.
I think that's what they're counting on, is people to say, well, I'm getting back something. It makes me feel less bad. But that shouldn't be the way it is. And you're right. It was never, anybody's fault that FTX took these actions, that they mismanaged. So, I mean, there's no reason for it to not be. I get it. It's smoother. Like you said, I understand why they're doing it. I understand that a solution is better than no solution, but it is 100% a slap in the face, because that's not what was loaned to them. And
yeah, I'm not a bankruptcy attorney or an attorney in general. So this is a very unqualified personal opinion here. I'm not sure if there's even any laws around that. I would suspect not, but that's kind of insane. Like, there should be some laws around bankruptcy, because it takes so long generally to sort it out. You've already lost your ability to use those assets and your ability to liquidate if you need resources. You shouldn't lose all of your upside while they spend 2 or 3 years chasing their tail, trying to pay people back to get out of trouble a little bit. Anyways, this one kind of sucks. I don't really like it. I hate that FTX is in the news again, of course, but they are trying to position, I guess. I think it's a little bit of like narrative positioning. I'm not 100% certain. They are trying to claim that they've got a new proposal from FTX Trading Limited to reignite the exchange and to make a whole bunch of profit back really quickly, to pay back creditors also. But what's kind of happened on the heels of that proposal is all of a sudden regulators in the bankruptcy court are going, wait a second, how are you actually valuing things? And, maybe we should like kind of level set on how that has to be done before we say it's acceptable in a bankruptcy situation. So I'm not really sure. Are you tired of hearing FTX in the news?
yeah, I want it to go away. I mean, that being said, I know that these things take time, and that's understandable. There's going to be negotiations in this process. I get it. Lawyering always takes forever, and this has gone a lot faster than it would have had it not been on chain, which is handy. So although I'm tired of hearing about it, I'm also appreciative that it hasn't been as long as we really think it has in terms of, scandal.
Well, any other bankruptcy would take orders of magnitude longer, just because it's so much harder to get information, right?
Right. Although I'm tired of hearing about I wouldn't necessarily want to see them pop back up again, like you said. But beyond that, I mean, it is what it is. There's a lot of people who are out of money. If it takes us keeping talking about it to keep them relevant, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this is just, I'd love to see people made whole. I'd love to see this not be at the top of the freaking headlines with respect to crypto any longer. I think personally that a lot of this PR finagling has a lot to do with like macro positioning from regulators and attorneys and TradFi and incumbents and all of these other people trying to keep the negative news in the news, and possibly stifle some of the growth of the space. Because wouldn't it be crazy if something catastrophic happened, but then everybody got paid back? Wouldn't that be like a huge signal that, holy crap, there's maybe some some significant efficiency upgrades and transparency upgrades to the traditional systems, where once the money's gone, you're never finding it. There's very few ways to get it back. In this particular case, it's pretty easy to follow the money because it's on chain. So anyways, FU, FTX. I know it's not Friday, but we're going to say FU to SBF and FTX again. Okay.
You're wearing shorts. You got your hot sweater on, but you're wearing shorts.
Well, yeah, if I wore pants and a sweater, then I'd be way too hot. Okay, so we've talked about this a lot. Well, not a lot, but it feels like it's kind of something that continues to come up over and over again. And 18 months ago, the SEC denied a request for more information from Coinbase to figure out how they can stay on the right side of regulation and how they can be a part of it and continue to grow and continue to scale. And they've never really received any proper stance on that. Now, Gensler's personal opinion and the SEC's SEC's stance in many cases are slightly different on certain assets. And so there's just so much uncertainty about this. And since the SEC has been losing lawsuits to people questioning their processes and if you're going to be declined, is it anti-capitalism to not give people like the answer to come into compliance? Like a regulator is just there to make sure people do and can do and are aware of what their requirements are. So when you ask for clarity, especially at a publicly traded company the size of Coinbase, it's very shocking. Are you tired of hearing the SEC and Coinbase in court too? Or Christine, what do you think?
I'm a big fan. I was reading some sort of statistic about how they're, originally when they got denied, they went down like 4% or something. But I feel like if there was something that I was happy to put my money behind, it would be people that push as hard for, the whole community as they do. So, I mean, Coinbase has really, really taken one on here. They are like, in my mind, the front runners of change making in the industry. And I'm not tired of hearing about them because they're really going after the SEC for everybody on everybody's account. And the harder they push, the more there is conflict in what the SEC is saying. Like now they just came out and said that not everything is a security. Well, that goes against what they said before. So we're like starting to make holes. So even though I can understand why you're like somebody would be tired of hearing about it, I'm not. Every time they go and fight back, it's kind of like these little micro wins of you're not going to shut us down. You're not going to stop us. This isn't some sort of revolution. This is a right. It is a right to know what the rules are so that we can play by them and to keep everybody safe. They're going about it in the right way. They keep asking for answers, and by continuing to not give us them, it exposes who they are and what they're about.
So it's probably worth clarifying just a little bit. I'm going to read a bit from the article, and then we'll talk about specifically why they declined it. And then I'd love your opinion on that. But so essentially what it said in the article is the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission, the SEC, has rejected after 18 months Coinbase's petition for new rules governing the digital asset sector, and of course explanations of how to stay in compliance with those rules. In a 3-2 vote, the SEC dismissed Coinbase's argument that the current regulations are unworkable for the crypto sphere. So ultimately, how I look at this is I actually think that's where the real conflict lies. Coinbase is saying, hey, for obvious reasons, we shouldn't all be securities. The SEC has said in uncertain terms, but has kind of implied that they think everything is securities. No one has made a decision. So Coinbase saying, well, it's unworkable. We can't in crypto meaningfully comply with the securities laws as they stand right now. Of course he's going to say that, because if he loses that argument, then he's been operating an unregistered securities exchange, which is a massive publicly traded company. The flip side of that is the SEC is obviously not wanting to give clarity on this because they're waiting for legislation, I guess, or I don't know. There's too much politicking happening behind the scenes. So they're kind of at this impasse where they're both saying, the SEC is saying, well, I can't give you answers. And Coinbase is saying, well, I mean, we can't comply with what you're saying. So what do we do? What are your thoughts on this? Like, who's wrong here? I mean, obviously, I think the SEC is wrong, but do you think that if Coinbase wanted to, under the current understanding, they could come into compliance?
No. So my problem with this whole thing is Coinbase came and was like, hey, we need some rules. We need to understand what we're doing. And then the SEC came back and said no. And then immediately after they said no, they sued Coinbase for not complying with the rules that don't exist, that they don't want to do. So it's like, but how be in good standing? But I think you're right. I think none of it has to do with any of that. They're just waiting for more information and politicking to happen in order for it to all fall into their pretty little plan and puzzle of what it's supposed to look like, which is really unfortunate because it's a lot of wasted money in the meantime. But for those of us who are building and continue to build it, we appreciate it and keep moving forward. I mean, it's not stopping everybody, right?
Yeah, I talk a lot to anybody that'll listen, really, about how I think there's a few groups in the space that are really doing a massive service for all of us. They have some firepower and they're capable of fighting these types of things. Obviously, Coinbase is one of them. Another one, and we'll end our year on Ripple's legal fate. So this is kind of the final thing that we wanted to talk that we're going to talk about today. So we've talked a lot over the last little while about what we think is going to happen with respect to Ripple, because they won some stuff and lost some stuff, and there's words of a settlement potentially in the works and all of this other stuff. So I'm going to read some thoughts here, and then I'd love your take on this, Christine, if you're comfortable with that. So essentially, the chief legal officer of Ripple, Stuart Alderati, asterisk here that we've commented a few times that he's the chief legal officer and has been very publicly making what seems like politically motivated or strongly motivated statements publicly, public lawyering, so to speak, between them and the regulators. So take what he's saying here with a grain of salt. But essentially, what he's suggested is that he thinks that there's going to be a resolution in Ripple's lawsuit with the SEC in 2024. He warns against, of course, continued regulation by enforcement, because it is very, very difficult on the crypto community and on the space, in general. He's also suggesting that legal conflicts may eventually go to the U.S. Supreme Court. And so it's important that the judiciary at all the levels is kind of rethinking how they're approaching this stuff. How does it work with respect to the actual laws that are currently on the books? So hopefully we see, again, a little bit more clarity there. He says that there's probably going to be, at least currently, and continue into 24, there's going to be a deadlock in the U.S., which puts the U.S. at a significant disadvantage relative to other countries globally, because it's almost impossible to operate in the U.S. legally currently. We think we are. Everybody thinks they are, but no one knows with any amount of certainty. So Ripple is, again, I think, saying this stuff out loud so that people beyond just who reads the court reports can actually kind of get their take on things. Do you think Ripple's doing us a service right now, Christine, or are they just trying to save their own skin?
Doesn't matter. I think that might be the same thing.
Fair enough. What do you think is going to happen? Do you think they're going to settle? It's going to be resolved? Ripple's going to win, which I doubt. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, being resolved would be, I think, pretty up there on best case scenarios. I do think that there's going to be a lot that happens this year. There's, like you and I have talked about before, it is an election year in the US, and there is going to be a lot of this stuff that I think gets talked about more than it normally would, because it's going to have to. And because there are not, high up there candidates, but candidates out there who are talking about these things, and people do care. And there are people like the Ripples and the Coinbases who are pushing it out there into the news by not stopping fighting. So I think that there will be a lot of advancement made this year. One way.
What I really like about this is Coinbase and Ripple were rewarded for being early, significantly, multiple tens of billions of dollars rewarded for being early. And what I love to see is that they're not dismissing the fact that they were rewarded for being early, and rather continuing to fight for the industry and putting their money where their mouth is in ways none of us could. I mean, if the SEC tried to sue us for $50 million, there's no freaking way any of our protocol, we would just go bankrupt. Every protocol just goes bankrupt at that point. And so there's only, a handful of people that can actually, take this through the court system. Again, we've talked about this a lot. Total legal fees, as far as I know, on fairly good authority, is nearing $500 million between Ripple themselves and Brad and other individuals that are also being sued by the SEC. It's crazy, absolutely crazy, how much money they've spent on this. And again, none of us could actually do that. It's worth noting that when they won that victory, that was everybody was talking about, XRP as a token has gone up 80% since then. I would argue that a lot of that has little to do actually with them winning, although partially. They've made some massive moves globally from a regulation perspective. They've acquired custodians in different jurisdictions. They're really making a move with governments and educational institutions and pretty much anybody from an enterprise perspective. There's some really, really cool stuff, I think, coming down from Ripple. I mean, do you think we'll see more of these kind of high profile cases, or are we kind of at this point now where everybody's just waiting and saying, okay, let's figure this out. If the SEC loses, or if there's not some resounding win, then at least we can continue until the legislators actually pass new laws. Where do you think this is going to go?
I think you're right that, this is a fight that only requires so many dogs, and the right ones are in there right now.
Right.
There's not too many other people that, if these guys lose, but I can't imagine them stopping anytime soon, even if this doesn't go the way we hope. It's not going to just get dropped. And I don't know if it would have a big enough impact from, I don't know. I'm not sure. I don't know if it would require that. I think they're doing a good job right now. And there's a lot of other ways. People I know haven't stopped. Like you said, even though it severely puts us behind in terms of what we can do here, people are still building and shipping products that, are for the better, are for the good of people. And we're just waiting to figure out how we fit into the game here in the US. I know they're in the same position in Canada. So, and in a couple countries there. So it's kind of like, you do the best you can as one of the little guys for now. And I'm really staying informed and doing your part and sounding your voice. And those things do matter. The amount that we get in front of people and say, hey, this technology is a win, not a loss. That's how we make a difference.
So at the risk of sounding like I'm wearing a tin hat, there's a lot of suggestion of federal agencies, not just by Republicans, but by a lot of people in the United States, being weaponized against or in the interest of special interests. And so in this particular case, Ripple is also claiming that the SEC has weaponized their regulations. And as a consequence of the lawsuit that was filed in 2022, I think, I don't want to misquote that. 2020. It felt like it had been longer. So the lawsuit that they filed in 2020, what they're arguing now is there's also a lot of intangible loss in terms of reputation, growth, traction. And that, from Ripple's perspective, was intended to stifle growth of this industry in the United States. And they've actually weaponized regulators to kind of go out and throw these exorbitant lawsuits and spend hundreds of millions of dollars on legal just to slow everybody down and to have crypto is bad at the top of all of the headlines. I sure hope that's not the case. I sure hope we don't see more of this unfairly tilted. But again, you can't ignore what's happening with Elon Musk either. Essentially they're forcing him into compliance nightmares all over the place, lawsuits everywhere. It seems a little weird. He was America's darling until he bought Twitter and restored free speech. And now all of a sudden, every regulator on every one of his businesses has issues with a bunch of random stuff. He was sued for not hiring amnesty seekers as employees for SpaceX. SpaceX is highly regulated and significant to national security. You can't just let amnesty seekers that you know nothing about work there. They would be sued for that if they did that. Anyways, don't get me started on this, but I do think that there's some weird, again, politicking, maybe not weaponizing, but it sure started to feel like it. I mean, to me, it seems like all signs are suggesting, whether we like it or not, the space is here to stay. And incumbents and large enterprise are starting to make moves to move into the space, acknowledging the technological innovation of blockchain for finance and for many other applications. It's only a matter of time, so they better stop and start focusing on moving forward before we lose any competitive advantage ever in the United States, which is definitely not unrealistic at this point. Anyways, all right, we are at the end of the episode and at the end of the year, and we did, I think we're at 206 episodes right now, or 205 episodes. What a year. Like, that's a lot. It sure doesn't feel like 200 episodes. I can't believe people listen to me.
I came to your 100th episode.
Yeah, we didn't do a 200th because Kiara's already gone, but maybe we'll do something cool in the new year well, we have a lot of really cool additional potential shows that we're going to add with other hosts and guests and different people. So it's pretty exciting. I think you'll see some different formats and some interesting things come New Year. Would love to wish everybody happy holidays, whatever that is. Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, whatever other celebrations happen.
What a great end of year celebration. And
whatever the end of year celebrations, happy holidays, Merry Christmas, whatever. Happy New Year also. 23 is a year that in many ways I'm grateful for, and in as many I'm excited to put behind us. So we will see you on the other side of 2023. Ideally, we'll be in an incredible bull market with a ton of momentum and a lot of hype and excitement. So touch some grass, spend time with your family. 24 is going to be a banger. So rest up, get prepared. With that, today I say to you, Christine, go FUD yourself.
Go FUD yourself, Jay.